Hello from Beer Australia Reviews, and today we are going to be sampling, tasting and reviewing something of a blast from the past from my Australian beer drinking sort of history. Now, when I first started coming over to Australia like 20 odd years ago, there was a beer that I used to get more than any other, and that is Redback. So this is the original Australian craft beer. This is the very first beer, craft type beer that was brewed in Australia back in 1986 by a guy called Phil Sexton. So this beer was actually already brewed, or this beer was brewed in WA by a brewery called Matilda Bay Brewing Co. Now, I actually live right next to Matilda Bay. It's just a coincidence that's where I live now. But I also used to drink this in Fremantle at the Sail and Anchor pub. So what they first did with Matilda Bay is they needed an outlet for the craft beer, and I don't know whether they took over the Sail and Anchor pub or that was just the place where they sold all the beer from, but the Redback beer was very first available in the Sail and Anchor in Fremantle. Now, the Sail and Anchor is still a really good place to go for beers, so this was selling like all sorts of quality beers on draft well before anybody had even heard of the term craft beer. Anyways, let's get the beer out of the fridge and in the glass, because that's what we're all here for. Okay, here we go. Redback beer. So this one is it's a German style Weissen beer. So it's made with pale malts and pale wheat. And it is a German style beer. So when I was first coming over to Australia 20 odd years ago, this was the sort of beer that I was drinking in Europe, because we used to get lots of different Weissen beers, wheat beers from Germany and from Belgium in the UK at that time. But it was unusual to see anything like this in Australia. And when I first tried it, it was like, oh, that actually is just like the genuine thing. So okay, now let's get it right in the glass. But with this being a Weissen beer, it's got sediment in it, and you have to give it a little bit of a roll around to release the sediment. Now, it's not as cloudy as it used to be. This I noticed it seemed to have a bit more sediments in the past. Okay, also people always like to know this one. We're opening this thing with it's a Victorinox Explorer Swiss Army knife with the standard classic bottle opener. Now, okay, hopefully we won't have any sort of disasters when we try and do this. I have had exploding things and various other different bits and pieces. Okay. There we go. Because with it being a traditional type beer, no twisty. Okay, let's get this one actually in the glass. It's a lot clearer and lighter in colour than what I remember from 20 years ago. So I know for certain that they have changed the recipe to make it more like the current craft beers. But to be honest, I like the ones that had all the really thick, juicy sediment in. I remember when Hoegaarden first came to the UK, when it was actually brewed in Belgium and not brewed under licence by Whitbread in the UK. It had chunks of sediment that used to float up and down in the glass when you poured it out. It was just a better beer all round. So give it a swirl and pour it in. Okay. So there we go. Redback beer. So yeah, it takes me back, this one. So a bit of information about it. So it's traditional style German Weissen beer. This one is 4.7%. It's with pale wheat and malted barley, Saz and Pride of Ringwood hops. So it's not a really hoppy beer. If you're used to any of the new range of craft beers, especially one of these really extra hoppy like IPAs and double IPAs, it's not like that. A Weissen beer, German Weissen beer, just isn't that sort of a beer. It has a more subtle flavour. The hops that go in there are just for a little bit of bitterness and not for all that spice, because a lot of the spice actually in the flavour comes actually from the wheat more than anything else. So let's give it a go. It takes me back. Oh, it's got a classic German Weissen beer sort of an aroma on this one. lots of citrus. It's got a really sweet aroma as well. Let's give it a go. Oh, it's tangy. It's fresh. It's sharp. The water quality in this is excellent. Now, they did bring this one back a couple of years ago, and I think it was being brewed in Victoria, somewhere around Melbourne. I don't know exactly where, but apparently now this one is being brewed in Western Australia again. So they must be doing the right thing with the water, because if this is brewed anywhere around Perth whatsoever, the water quality, you've heard me say it on multiple different videos, the water quality in Perth is absolutely abysmal. So they've and you cannot taste the water in this. It just tastes fresh and clean. It tastes as good as if it was a actually made in Germany beer with the water straight from the mountains, which is not like the water we get in Perth. So, oh, it sparkles. It's not as thick and malty as it used to be. So I know you'll always look back on the past and you'll say, oh, things were better when it was made in the traditional way, but they say themselves that they've moved on, they've changed the recipe a little bit to more take in what people like these days, which is fair enough. So it's not quite the Redback that I remember, because whenever I used to come over to Australia, I'd stay at my sister's place in Fremantle, and I would get on the phone to her and say, hey, I'll be in at such and such a time, get me 6 Redbacks. And when I got to her place, sometimes, not always, you would have a pack of 6 Redbacks in the fridge waiting for me when I got there. So when I used to come over in the early 2000s, Redback is just about the beer that I used to drink all the time. So it just reminds me of those times. So anyways, okay, it's got a really sweet aroma. You can taste the fact that it's still a live beer because it's got the sediment in there. It's a little bit yeasty. You get a little bit of like the biscuity sort of Malteser sort of a flavour in this one, but it's nice when you drink the thing. It just is good. Despite the fact that this one is like 4.7%, you can really easy swig back a few of these because it's a light beer. It doesn't like coat your mouth, and it doesn't have like a big bitter aftertaste. It doesn't have all that extra spice what you have in like a like one of these new range of craft beers. It's just it is just a nice drink. Do I prefer the older version from like 20 odd years ago? Yes, I think I do. However, it's just so good to have Redback beer again. Now, one of the other things as well, you'll know about my VB fridge. Now, the actual real reason why I have a VB fridge is because I couldn't get a Redback fridge. I did everything I could. I looked everywhere to get myself a Redback fridge, and they didn't have one. So I had to get the VB fridge instead. So now, Mr. Matilda, or Mr. Bay, your first name Matilda, please make me a fridge like this one. I want one like that. If you start making if you make one of those fridges, same as my VB fridge here, I will swap you. You can have the VB fridge, I'll have the Redback fridge, because Redback is my beer. Is my beer of choice in Australia, going back for a couple of decades. Anyway, I'm going to finish this one off right now. Yep. Yeah, and thanks for watching.